Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Lots of things going on, a lot of conversations, a lot of different issues going on, and a lot of things coming around from around the state and, of course, across the country. Not totally going to be violating the whole Friday rules, but a lot of response coming in, and particular impacts coming from the state of Texas to the whole Supreme Court ruling. Yeah, they got a bunch of them coming out here, and the one about affirmative action certainly garnering a lot of response, including from local and regional lawmakers, and definitely some impacts to be seen, not immediately in our local area, but for the state, certainly. And also, speaking of the state, the next legislative session continues on, drags on, already kind of feeling that way, with first shot across the bow, you might want to say, given the hashtag kerfuffle nature of this whole thing, the passage of a bill by the Senate moving forward with their proposal to achieve those property tax relief goals that the governor has retasked them with. So we'll see how this is continuing to shape up, but also a whole lot more going on in our local region, including the status of fireworks for the 4th of July. May be a little bit surprising to you. Also, some action on school safety security being taken by another local school districts with specific action on officers, armed ones, specifically in our area. Also, a note on the preparation for the July 4th. Some more campaign announcements that we'll be talking about, as well as that record-setting heat truly getting closer to setting some endurance records, but maybe not in the right way. And also, just as a note on something being reported on today, how not to exercise in this hot weather, or really maybe any time, unless you got a real good reason to. But a lot to get into here today. So however you're tuning in with us, joining in with us, whether leaving the comments over on the social media or just dropping those likes and reacts, we do appreciate. Like Alex Campos, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, and of course Amber Banda with the rock on. Do appreciate it. A lot to get into today. We'll get into those phone calls a little bit later, as we usually do. But another busy day, another lot of details going on here. So one of the biggest things, of course, coming up, as was of course noted there, is that Texas, not the Texas Supreme Court, but response coming in from Texas, from the Supreme Court on their decision in order to not have basically making it unconstitutional for there to be the affirmative action in any university, whether it be public or private. And so the Texas Tribune notes specifically on that one, and the article out as of this afternoon, UT Austin, only Texas public university affected by Supreme Court's ending use of race in admissions, noting that no other public universities use race as a factor, but Texas private schools like Rice and Southern Methodist University will be impacted. Of course, noting on the 6-3 vote that specifically goes on the two oldest public and private universities in the nation, Harvard and University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, specifically citing the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. And so this has been a cause celebre for some. Harvard, I know, has certainly been a factor of it in the past. And in the decision, as again noted by the Texas Tribune here, them having already delved through that, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority that the admissions programs at both schools were, quote, well-intentioned and implemented in good faith, but further on, quote, the court has permitted race-based college admissions only within the confines of narrow restrictions, such as such admission programs must comply with strict scrutiny, may never use race as a stereotype or negative, and must at some point end. And saying that both admissions at those schools, the ones noted, that of Harvard and UNC Chapel Hill, failed each of those criteria. So again, the impact in Texas expected to be not that widespread, and no immediate impact expected right here in the Borderland region. But of course, you could say that there is a bit of this that has been baked into particularly issues that came out of the most recent legislative session, that specifically of the end of diversity and inclusion programs that were going on at not even just public universities, but also publicly operated organizations, primarily affecting universities, among other things. But well, still seeing some of that, some of the response coming into our newsroom, such as a statement from State House Representative Mary Gonzalez, Democrat representing the District 75, which forgetting my state house representation maps at the point, but in the El Paso area, lambasting it among other things, saying, quote, today's illogical, flawed, and disastrous Supreme Court decision is going to greatly harm the social and economic future of our country. Affirmative action has transformed communities by addressing institutional and historic barriers and giving individuals the educational opportunities that were denied their parents and grandparents. Going on to close, they're saying, quote, our institutions of higher education contribute the most when people from a broad variety of experiences, opinions, and backgrounds come together to forge new theories about our world and humanity. The best ideas can only develop with input from all segments of our society. Sadly, this decision takes away from that ideal. And other people chiming in, including Louis Panado and Ida Beza Gardner with the High and the Wave. Thank you all for chiming in. So, still response coming from the Borderland region, but there's probably a lot more that'll be coming in the long run here. Otherwise, action from the State House, the first passage of a bill that, we'll see, it's not exactly a fast roll blazing a trail or anything like that, but given that the governor, threw the gauntlet with this new legislative session saying you are going to do something when it comes to tax relief, because we got this big old surplus that I promised I would use, me again speaking as the governor here. And if you all don't do it, subtext is serious egg on the face / major election implications for himself. Just putting that out there. But also, y'all didn't do anything during the previous legislative session. If I didn't do my job for a month, I'm just saying. In any case, what has now been done, the Senate, that being particularly from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, tweeting a little bit earlier today, releasing an official statement on the passage of Senate Bill 1 and Senate Joint Resolution 1 property tax relief, saying specifically, quote, I have been fighting for property tax relief since before I held elective office. I have been clear that I will not leave Austin without property tax relief targeted at homeowners through an increased homestead exemption to provide them as much relief as possible. Homeowners need property tax relief right now. Of course, issue there, and the whole kerfuffle. There's other words I want to use, but I can't, given it's the radio. A whole fracas that this has been focused on how they go about the property tax relief. Again, no one's particularly saying, no, I don't think that property taxes should be relieved. Like, if anyone's standing up and saying that, they are in the vast minority. But even with the side saying, yes, property tax relief, the way to go about it, devil beyond being in the details, essentially the tax rate compression, the idea of basically sending a bunch of the surplus money or promising to the school districts that we will fund you more directly from the state as opposed to entirely or effectively majorly from your local taxing entities and districts, saying that we are going to do this. And of course, what it has been, the SB 1, specifically proposed by State Senator Paul Bettencourt, increases the homestead exemption to $100,000 and also provides the property tax compression to decrease property tax rates, decreases the rollback school rates for school districts from 2.5% to 1.75%, further decreasing school property tax rates, and doubles the threshold before businesses must pay a franchise tax to $2.47 million, noting that eliminates the tax for 67,000 rather, not just 67, small businesses, and eliminates the no tax due filing requirement. And the estimation, again, from the statement from the Lieutenant Governor on this, saying this will provide a 43% decrease in homeowner school property taxes on average. So your mileage may vary. Technically, if you have a hugely valuable property, of which there are a few in El Paso County, but I know of at least a handful of like $1 million properties. And no, I'm not talking about hugely expansive ones or like apartment blocks, like single family homes that could hold way more than one family, but that's their decision if they want to go about that and live in a place where you have to can't shout from one end of the house but have to call someone at the other end of it type of situation. Then I'm aware of a handful of those here. So that $100,000 increase in the homestead exemption, I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at, but wouldn't do quite as much from them. And of course, the current homestead exemption is, I'll just have the number up in front of me, but not that high. I want to say it's like, what is it, 25? I was just looking at the numbers earlier. Let me pull that up here in just a second from the handy dandy EPCAD website, of which I spend probably way too much recreational time. But in any case, that is part of the situation and part of what is going on situation at the State House. From the House side of things, is it's, as noted by the Texas Tribune here specifically, Unclear what exactly is going to be happening from the House side of it. Of course, they got to figure out some way to get simpatico on this. Otherwise, the governor is just going to keep calling special sessions. So unless they want to be in session until the next session, which I also have to wonder how well that's going to play out when re-election being like, sorry, I haven't been able to be home to campaign, guys. We've been in special session ever since the last session. And that would lead to, at least in my mind, the natural question of, so what happened during those? What'd you do? So, there's an impetus to get something done, even if consensus has been fleeting at best on this. But I will say that, again, the Texas Tribune notes here that House Speaker Dade Phelan and House lawmakers so far are sticking with the proposal to take all $12.3 billion lawmakers set aside this year for tax cuts and send it to school districts so they can lower their tax rates, focusing solely on the, get used to this phrase in this case, tax rate compression. And that would make it so that it's both homeowners and business owners. But, again, the fracas that is going on here is over whether it will be just to homeowners or primarily to homeowners, or also that homestead exemption, which is very much the star that the lieutenant governor has hitched his wagon to. So let's just hope that they can at least get in a room long enough to actually debate about this, though it's noted that probably not much action will happen about this before the holiday weekend, as, again, that Texas Tribune notes that it's not clear if they'll be able to do much of anything. Quoting directly, it's unclear when the House will take up the bill. The House meets next on Friday, but is expected to quickly adjourn until July 5th. So I wouldn't hold my breath on this one getting settled in immediately short term. As RJ promotes, saying, at least we don't have to pay $1 million for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo in Bozeman, Montana. Isn't it that, or somewhere in Florida, in a otherwise resorty area that actually has some of the highest property values in the country? You would expect, New York City or something like that. But no, it's one of those places that I guess everyone wants to move to and have all of the elbow room. Anyway, that's some of the things going on in the state and responses to it. But of course, other situations affecting and going on directly in the borderland as well, including possible affecting your 4th of July celebrations. Just don't do what, will admit I got mildly triggered by a video one of y'all sent me the other day, including yesterday, about giving me flashbacks to that one time I was out at one of those free-for-all 4th of July celebrations where unlimited purchase of fireworks and everyone was taking full advantage of that. I'm not saying that I understood what it was like to be in Vietnam, but that's probably the closest I'll ever experience. Anyway, talking about that and a whole lot more coming out after this break, as we have Eric von Holstein-Rathlow joining us as well, chiming a good afternoon to you as well. Got to take that break now. Coming out of this break, we'll be talking more about what's going on in the borderland and, of course, taking more of those comments, calls a little bit later as usual. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for slowing for a medical emergency reported Campbell, south of Schuster at Crosby Avenue. We're taking an alternate route like Kansas Street or Stanton instead. Another medical on Alameda westbound at Fulham. You could use Paisano to get around that one. And a medical on Stanton at Main Street as well. There, Mesa Street, again, makes a good alternate route. And that's a look at your latest El Paso traffic.
Inflation compensation is back.
Oh, yes.
Demand your supply of $1,000.
$1,000? Oh.
Just listen for the keywords to text in to win $1,000. Happening now.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. with the inflation compensation on News Radio 690 AM. Brought to you by Charlie Clark Nissan and Charlie Clark Infinity of El Paso. Orale!
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Total Support Plans are your tech plans for the unplanned. With 24/7 PC protection against bugs, cracks, and hacks. Plans start as low as $199.99. Plus, now get up to $250 off select computers in-store only. Offer ends July 29th. See an associate for details. Protect your tech at Staples.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
From iHeart Podcasts, Supreme, The Battle for Roe, tells the story of the unlikely champions behind the landmark case Roe v. Wade. Starring Maya Hawke as 26-year-old lead attorney Sarah Weddington.
We're challenging the Texas abortion laws in federal court.
And Academy Award nominee William H. Macy as Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun.
Time is not the most important factor. Getting it right is.
Listen to the podcast Supreme, The Battle for Roe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Today's the day. Circle K is hosting Circle K Fuel Day, offering 40 cents off each gallon of gas between 4 and 7 p.m. today, June 29th, with a discount applied directly at the pump. That's right. You go to Circle K today between 4 and 7 o'clock, and any customer in line before 7 o'clock will receive the 40 cents off discount directly at the pump. The price of the pump will be the discounted price. Go to Circle K. Get there today between 4 and 7. Circle K Fuel Day, 40 cents off each gallon. Check out more details at CircleK.com.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-334-2266. That's 800-334-2266. 800-334-2266.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. And for those particularly logging on and chiming in over on the social media feeds, no, I was not slowly getting shorter that whole last segment. Apparently the chair was just stuck in a position where it was very slowly lowering, so I did not also suddenly gain height or anything like that. But those are the bonuses you get if you look at over us on social media, and apparently I make interesting facial expressions, so that's the pitch for that if you don't want to chime in otherwise. In any case, a lot of other commentary going on there, including we used hashtag kerfuffle being focused on today, and RJ promotes suggesting the hashtag cluster flubbing. I like cluster muffin, but that's an interesting one too, saying that cluster flubbing, FLUBBING, before anyone tries anything, is out of hand too. Yeah, I'll agree with that to a certain amount. And Eric von Holstein-Rathlow saying it has to be a righteous kerfuffling and to be a good kerfuffling. I think the very mention of kerfuffle generally tends to be, I imagine it like a slap fight, and that's basically what we've basically been seeing whenever it comes to, and yeah, RJ saying, yeah, hate it when the chair leaks, and I managed to make it worse during the rest of that whole segment as I tried to fix it without totally distracting everything to get completely off topic. But yeah, it's a slap fight between the legislature and the houses of it and the personalities therein, with Dade Phelan and the Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the House, and of course Dan Patrick, respectively, just not able to get on the same page. So again, the governor giving them another chance or telling them to try again. It does kind of feel like y'all gonna have to sit together until you play nice, kind of like middle school, or heck, that's more like elementary school, isn't it? Type of, come on, do it. Whether it works out this time. He's already, I don't know how much more like ultimatums the governor truly has left for him. He did end up vetoing dozens of bills in a do it or I'm gonna, and then he did it. But that's the thing about a threat, isn't it? It's only as good as you can still follow through with it. It's like, with a kid. You take away all their responsibility, leave them in a bare room. What else can you do to them if you're taking away all their stuff and leaving them with, a cot and a bucket? Okay, anyway, in any case, a little bit dark there, but this is, again, the frustration coming through. But, of course, we're getting close to the July 4th holiday, speaking of freedoms or lack thereof. It's specifically some actions being taken out of El Paso County, mildly surprising to me, and particularly since it is that we've been having those very hot temperatures. In fact, let's start with that one right now. El Paso Matters notes that after 13 consecutive days of 100-degree heat, El Paso could approach all-time record. Not necessarily in how hot each individual days it was, though we've been seeing, I think, the official temperatures like it was, 107 yesterday, and been pretty well above 105 most of it. But El Paso Matters notes that El Paso could set a record of more than 3 consecutive weeks of 100-plus degree days if a respite of rain doesn't materialize over the weekend ahead of July 4th. According to local forecasts, they note that this is the latest arrival of triple-digit temperatures since 2015 as of this year, and with 13 consecutive days of 100-degree heat, and Thursday's high is expected to be 102. And according to our news partners over at KFOX 14, I do believe we have achieved that 104, actually, what them logging that one as. So, yeah, still having fun with that one, absolutely. So, El Paso Matters notes that if we get below below 100 day coming up, the previous record, 23 consecutive days above 100 degrees set back in 94. So we could be on course unless the rain comes in and makes it gets a little bit of the cool off. Even the clouds we've been having, was having a lunch meeting with some other people earlier today, actually with, of course, show sponsor Chef Ruli's over at Ruli's International Kitchen, and just how bright it was, because the clouds, sure, were covering, but it was doing that whole diffuse lighting thing, so it was way brighter than even just the direct sunlight. As we also have Roscoe checking in, or Aden, actually from Social Ice. Hello to you as well. Thanks for checking in and chiming with us over there. And RJ saying, remember, specifically back in 94, as multiple days of 110 or more, and when you have 117 and your AC went out on a trip to Alamogordo. And that's a long, flat, hot spate to go through. I got to imagine, depending on which way you're going. I never recommend the Oro Grande route, if only because that little town. And it's, what is it the last time I went there? I think it goes down to 25 there, or maybe I'm imagining it. It feels like it does in any case. If y'all ever head out 54 going far enough, there's a reason I almost never go that way. Though I do miss the Oro Grande National Forest that used to be out there, of which the joke was it was one big tree that apparently one dude took it upon himself to water for decades. And unfortunately, I think he bought the farm at old age, because it was one old dude, and unfortunately I think it withered away, so the Oro Grande National Forest is no more. In any case, the surprising part of that, and the temperatures, it's been hot around here, that's no secret, but the surprising part for me, having covered Commissioners Court decently closely for recent years, is that El Paso County commissioners have taken no action, quote unquote, regarding the sale, use, or possession of fireworks for 4th of July. That's according to our news partners over at KFOX 14, and that specifically the deadline to ban the use of sticks and fin rockets within El Paso County was on June 15th, and that there was a final presentation at their special session meeting, and they received a update on the county's drought index, and says that it was not within, they would need rating on that scale, technically the Keach-Bryant Drought Index, KBDI. I think I've heard that one in the past. I've just kind of forgotten that one. Would have to be, it's at 569 as of that date, and it would have to be 575. So close, but no cigar in this case, and plenty of fireworks. And that actually it has now lowered down to 619. So it's high risk fire potential as opposed to severe risk. So El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego, speaking with our news partners at KFOX 14, said, County judge, that is, said he is working closely with fireworks vendors who have all agreed to not sell sticks and fin rockets, which are more difficult to control and causing potential wildfire, but the sale of fireworks will remain permitted. Now, this is an action by the county of El Paso. So, just as a reminder, there are still ordinances and other things in place, particularly in the city of El Paso, but outside city limits, and your mileage may vary on the different municipalities that do populate our area, but fireworks will be for sale. So all of those little fireworks stands that you see creeping up right on the borders of the county and all those things will be creeping in a little bit closer this year, very likely, though. That what's that major one out 54 or I-10 way right as you hit the state line? Yeah, I'm sure that one will still be, and others like it will still probably be doing some gangbusters come this, but there will be more availability a little bit closer and within El Paso County. And just as a side note on that, as is often very important to mention, and just to keep your neighbors in mind, if you are choosing to, again, if you're one of those people within the city limits, just know that I hate you if you're setting off fireworks at 3 a.m. But specifically, El Paso Animal Services also offering free pet microchipping to prevent 4th of July runaways, specifically offering this at their center at 5001 Fred Wilson Avenue. And starting today, they're also registering and updating microchips on local databases and giving away ID tags and collars while supplies last. So they are, of course, encouraging anyone who has a pet to be more proactive, and also if someone finds a pet. So be sure to take advantage of that if you're in a situation, and if you don't have quite a lot of calming medication like I already do. And they do recommend about microchipping, posting found pets on social media, and filing a found pet report, particularly if you do end up finding one. And noting that, of course, 4th of July, with all the fireworks and noise that comes along with it, is one of the hotbeds for that kind of activity and issues. So just keep that in mind. But there's a lot more going on in the Borderland we'll talk about here after we take this next break, including interesting action taking out from another major school district in our area when it comes to school security. Also a re-election campaign, and also just north of the Borderland, major action, not totally. Now, it's an argument to be made that there is a new era of space flight being kicked off right from our region, but we'll talk about that more right after this break. You are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A murder investigation is underway in East El Paso. According to police, the shooting happened last night in the 2000 block of Diciembre Drive near Hanks High School. A 39-year-old man was taken to a local hospital with a gunshot wound. Police say that man later died, and investigators say he had been driven to the hospital in a private vehicle. No arrests have been made. The Isleta Independent School District Board of Trustees has voted to assign an armed officer to every campus. A spokesperson with the district says the action was taken to comply with a recently passed state law. House Bill 3 requires every Texas school district to have an armed officer on school grounds. The district voted last night to approve armed officers, which can be a combination of armed security officers or an off-duty El Paso police officer. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Expect heavier slowing now on I-10 eastbound between Raynor over to Paisano. Also a medical emergency. Watch for fire crews staged at the scene on Stanton at Main, or avoid the area. Take an alternate route like Mesa Street. And another medical active right now on Campbell south of Schuster at Crosby Avenue. Watch for fire crews staged there as well. That's your El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Another hot one for our Friday. Heat advisory through Friday night. We have a weather warn day for tomorrow. High around 103 degrees, a little breezy with a 10% chance of a storm. Taking a look at the weekend, not quite as hot. Partly cloudy skies. Should be dry for your Saturday. High around 101. As we look to your Sunday, partly cloudy skies. High around 100 degrees with a 10% chance of a storm. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories.
We'll have the story of our fourth president, James Madison, from Hillsdale College president Larry Arnn. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's the Marketer's Report. Today, Kate Cronin, Chief Brand Officer of Moderna, tells us about the advantages the speed of audio production affords their growing tech company.
At Moderna, we have a mindset saying that we pivot fearlessly. And I think with audio, you can pivot fearlessly. You can go where the news is and bringing in content that perhaps you didn't have a few weeks earlier. It's less 6 months in advance or 3 months in advance when you do a TVC. You're able to create really nimble content, which I think in this day and age, and particularly at Moderna, where we have new information coming out on a regular basis, being able to feed that information to the audio format makes being nimble and pivoting easy.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to all, every audience, live conversations, trusted influencers, and the insights and data you need to grow. Not just a media company, iHeartMedia is your access company. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Hello, neighbor. El Paso Children's Urgent Care is moving in on June 5th at the corner of Zaragoza and Richbeam. Goodbye ER wait times and hello non-emergent walk-ins. For emergencies, visit El Paso Children's Hospital. Go to elpasochildrens.org/urgent care.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's. This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of interesting discussions that ended up happening over in those locations. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in, do appreciate it. Like, again, Adon from Social Ice over on the YouTube, and those dropping those likes and reacts primarily on the Facebook. Of course, RJ Promotes, Flaco Jimenez, Ida Beza Gardner, James Holmes, Otto Campos, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes, with some discussions going on also about kerfuffling and the merits therein of it. And remembrance is going on in between RJ and Eric von Holstein Rathlau about that spate of the longest record, anyway, of more than 100-degree days back in 94, and how miserable it was. RJ saying it was definitely a Phoenix-type summer. Don't live there for a whole bunch of reasons, including that. And also mentioning that there was blackouts that were happening at that time, almost weekly for a couple of months there. So, yeah, glad we're not having that one right now, knock on wood. If that AC in this building wasn't running, I don't know how well this would be working out. So I'll definitely be preaching that for now. And just as a note, there was some social media reports earlier today about police stopping someone who was out exercising in this heat, which both maybe not the most advisable thing, but the reason they stopped him doing so is because it wasn't totally a repeat of an incident that happened, I want to say within the last 6 months, but I don't have the exact date in front of me, of someone who was out doing essentially a full ruck and gear type march with in this case, replica rifle. Specifically, it looks like a AR-15 style rifle, but one of the blue polymer ones, and pretty clearly that. But also, dude had like a full ruck on and also a gas mask. So apparently a few people called concern about that, and again, some social media posts purporting to be the resolution of that situation, showing the individual with the gear off, speaking to in looking like a median near the Tierra Este area, speaking to police, but that released after the post called it a toy. In this case, I'm going to call it a training rifle. Again, that blue polymer that anyone who has in or near service or handled any of that type of gear would probably recognize as something that's meant to be closer to a replica than a toy, but a similar form factor to what would maybe be actually being used. do have more statements coming into the newsroom here in the progression of the hour, including one from El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar on the Students for Fair Admissions, Inc. versus President and Fellows of Harvard College, the Supreme Court decision that has been going on, or yeah, RJ, in that situation with the police interdiction, glutton for punishment or some serious training. That did not look like an issued gas mask, so maybe ROTC level gear. But and Amber was speaking her earlier, saying that may have seen this dude going around doing this previously. So little column A, little column B to your assertion there, RJ. Will say that. But as I was, yeah, or that one in need of serious Xanax. I mean, there's big monkey energy, and then there's just like doing that. I guess it was earlier today, so not like right now when we're heating some of the peaks of temperatures, to which I hope all of y'all out there driving right now have got your AC serviced and checked out, just topped up one of our vehicles around this fleet, because Lord knows, don't want to get anywhere near an AC outage. So hope y'all are doing well there as well. But as I was saying, statement out from El Paso Congresswoman and Democrat Veronica Escobar, who has also, as of this week, officially launched her re-election campaign, technically as of yesterday, with the private event at later at 5:30 yesterday. Also speaking on her appointment to the Biden-Harris campaign leadership team in the local area. So not a total surprise there of her regarding for re-election in that case. Will be very interesting to see how the opponents scale ends up filling up this time around. Did have some challengers both on her own ticket as well as, of course, across the aisle last time, with some notables locally anyway who have been maybe positioning themselves for it, but I think this is the first real major announcement. Otherwise, a local school district, in response to Texas House Bill 3 that does require every Texas school district to have armed security or an armed officer on school grounds. Isleta Independent School District, as noted by our news partners at KFOX 14, voting yesterday night to assign an armed officer to every campus in order, again, to comply with that new state law, as has been signed into law earlier this month. And of course, the question about what's going on with the other major school districts in our area. Our news partners at KFOX 14 contacted EPISD and SISD, found to see how they will be complying with it. Some email back from EPISD saying, quote, EPISD will comply with all state mandates, and no response as of the publication time for SISD yet, Socorro Independent School District. So not surprising there, because it's going to be a requirement. This is not a suggestion from the state, but also the funding amounts from this, I think, frankly, some of this implementation may be pending on what they actually end up deciding in this legislative session. In one other bit of completely different news, of course, in the local space race, what's going on, Virgin Galactic having announced it earlier this month, and saw the culmination of today their first commercial space flight, flying out from Spaceport America in Sierra County. And this one primarily crewed by Italians, randomly. I'm not quite sure how that one came about, but I do believe, at least according to the release from Virgin Galactic on this, that specifically they're calling this Galactic 01, a scientific research mission carrying 3 crew members from the Italian Air Force and the National Research Council of Italy. And they were on there. There were also some scientific payloads on board. If anyone else was watching the live stream a little bit earlier today, or the replay like I was, as we also have Austin Redfern joining us over on the social media, better late than never, indeed, along with other contributors, let's put it that way. In any case, Virgin Galactic announcing this, their beginning of the commercial space flight, and significant in a couple of ways, particularly, of course, for our region. Mondo Mancana putting it as the spaghetti launch. A little bit more cohesive than that might be, though I guess maybe dry spaghetti would fare better than wet spaghetti. Anyway, point is that they were both passengers and scientific payloads. One of the interesting things, of course, there was the testing going on for years of the Spaceship One, and this, the actual now commercial flight vehicle, still launches from that interesting actual, it's the flight launch system. So the reason they're in this region overall is, so the phrase goes, they get the first mile free by being here in the high desert with reasonably expectable conditions, except of course for the serious amount of heat we've been having lately, but it's still going to make it up. So essentially the actual suborbital craft is underslung on the White Knight craft, which looks like a split airplane, the fuselage on both sides, and the spacecraft in the middle of it flies up, and then it detaches from that and then flies up into the actual, beyond the stratosphere at that point. And one of the interesting things mentioned from that is that beginning of the actual commercial flights, these ones being paid spots on there again on behalf of the Italian government, that there was also scientific payload that each seat that is on this, again, it looks like a longer version of that Spaceship One, that a seat can be removed and have scientific payload put into place instead. But of course, this does now the later one. So this was the basic confirmation that commercial spaceflight can happen. And so this is some of the first major commercial action to have now happened from the, again, Spaceport America. That also has some serious implications also for some local governments. I want to say that Doñana County commissioners, or at the very least, some of the regional ones that have some stake, including ownership in that there's an amount that they will get paid for every launch. And those costs are not insignificant, as the other reporting going on in the area and nationally is coming up about this, that there is expected to be about an 80-person long, give or take, was it 80 or 800? Let me double check on that one. Wait list for people to now get on board with it. That has a price tag of $450,000 per ticket. So just that's $450,000. That's the cost that it ends up coming out to. So, I mean, estimations, and I think that Virgin Galactic has released some of the information about what their wait list is, but it's dozens at the very least. And given that they take up, I want to say 8 people at a time, let me double check that one. That's, I mean, do the math there for yourself and how many essentially immediate millions it is per flight, but also it's taken a minute to get here as well. Note, among other things, peak altitude of 53 miles, and the flight happening this morning, landing a little bit about mid-morning after the completion of the flight in our area. So it is interesting. It is exciting in its own way, and the way that we've had this whole locally, regionally based space race kind of on either side of us, if you want to think about that, with the Blue Origin going on closer down to the Van Horn area, and other development happening in the interim in our area, including more development, advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, etc., going on, and UTEP developing that, and well as some of the county facilities here in El Paso focusing on making it more available, maybe transitioning with having an eye towards making this more viable and possible in our area. In any case, it's Flaco Meta saying, I bought some stock in Virgin Galactic so far in his tank. Hopefully this helps. I mean, if it bears out, if they are actually having the people who signed up to shell out just shy of $500,000 each to get a chance for I'm not actually sure how long the flight is. That's a more interesting question, I guess I want to know. But the fact that there is actual, beyond just let me look out the window and take the world's most expensive Instagram video, one of the world's most expensive. I'm sure there's something else stupid that you could do that would cost way more money that you could put on Instagram. But there's actually the scientific potential for it. And particularly out of the trip I took most recently over to the Staunton Space Center, one of the potentials about the commercialization of space, I mean, the best example I think you could give right now, not exactly in this same vein, but what Starlink is doing, that whole system. Now, they're putting up satellites, sure, but there are also the idea of microsatellites, something that is essentially not quite orbital, but can stay up for a bit, and the packages that can be done and science research, et cetera, that can be done with that. The idea of actually having space-based commercial platforms beyond, of course, just the ISS or any of those like space hotel concepts that have been floated both in pseudo-reality and, of course, sci-fi through years, make it interesting potential. It's an exciting time to be alive. I'll just put it that way here, as we have a lot of other commentary going in, including Mondo Mancanda asking, does the $450,000 price tag include a decent meal? To my knowledge, no, though if there wasn't champagne when you land or something, I'd be incredibly disappointed. And RJ saying, I'll just sell my house multiple times and buy a ticket since I'll be needing to get out of town ahead of authorities. There's the bad news for you. You land basically where you started at this point here. So unless you're going to take one hell of a parachute jump out at the very height of it, good luck. I'll just put it that way. And Willie Jenkins saying that, you could call it maybe a non-plus sounding with a hum. But in any case, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we usually do at this point during the program. A lot of stuff going on in our area, a lot of stuff affecting us, and a lot of statements and other things continuing to develop as we creep closer to the weekend. So if you want to get on that line, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for slowing for the accident on Montana Avenue at Justice Drive, or use an alternate route like Edgemere to avoid slowing. And watch for police activity reported on Gateway East at Lee Trevino. And on Loop 375 North at Vista del Sol, watch for a stalled vehicle. It's going to be off to the right on the shoulder. That's a look at your latest El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
If you're suffering and there's a safe, natural, easy-to-use solution to help make you feel better, wouldn't you at least want to try it? That's why millions of people use Navage nasal care to help relieve their symptoms of sinus congestion, allergies, snoring, and other nasal-related problems. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage to make cleaning your nose easy. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, helping flush out everything that makes you miserable. Nearly 4 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier. People like Candace, a verified Navage user who writes, "This is the greatest invention ever made. I truly can't believe the difference and the relief it has made in my sinus problems. Thank you," unquote. Navage is the safe, drug-free solution you've been looking for. Available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Target, and Navage.com. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to know?
Too hard. Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's lessons take just 15 minutes a day.
15 minutes isn't long.
Nope. And they're fun.
Fun isn't hard.
Right. Babbel's interactive lessons, podcasts, games, and more make it fun and engaging, so you don't realize you're learning a language, but you are. And Babbel's lessons are built around real life. You can choose from topics like travel, business, relationships, and more. You'll learn what matters most to you. Plus, Babbel's lessons are designed to get you speaking right away. In 3 weeks, you're able to start having conversations.
Just 3 weeks? Even better.
Since Babbel's lessons are designed by language experts and voiced by real native speakers, you'll get the accents just right and be able to carry on conversations with confidence.
Learning a language with Babbel doesn't take long. And with Babbel, it isn't hard. It's perfect.
And now, try Babbel free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
If your business is feeling a summer hiring wave, then you need Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program. Of course, we have those phone lines open now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And a lot of discussion going on, particularly on the social media. Appreciate everyone tuning in, chiming in over there, leaving their likes, reacts, and among other things, including discussion of what exactly comes from these flights. The new spacecraft, actually, Unity, the VSS Unity. The flight takes from takeoff to, according to Virgin Galactic on this, that particularly on the flight that happened, the takeoff time was at 8:30 a.m. local time, and that the landing time was 9:42 a.m. So a little bit over an hour, including the pre-launch time, I guess, and they go about just under 53 miles up with a top speed of just under Mach 3. And there is, I was partially correct, 800 waiting lists is what has been announced by Virgin Galactic so far. And so if we are going to go with the total price tag, now some of those signups were before there was when Branson made his actual flight on that one, becoming a part of course, the billionaire space race. But okay, if all of them were to be that $450,000, that's roughly 800. Waiting list could be upwards of $360 million. Now, I am not espousing investment advice by any means, but what I will say is that some other analysis, including from space.com, is that there has been a lot of setbacks, among other things, and that there was a net loss of $130 million in the first quarter of 2021, but that there is $122 billion cash reserve. So don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So, of course, some of the competition comes to mind, including Blue Origin, which has notably not disclosed its ticket prices, but is doing commercial flight on its own. But I will say that when it comes to Virgin Galactic, they are looking at, now that they've done this first successful commercial one, doing this on at least a monthly basis. So probably a lot more of that coming up here. So don't worry, RJ, you might get your chance before too long to I'm guessing stowawaying is going to be pretty hard in this circumstance, but you never know. There's going to have to be a first at some point, just saying that. Anyway, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. A little bit short time to get to any of the calls, but again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876-544-KTSM, as we will have plenty of time in the coming hour, taking more of your phone calls and, of course, comments. So again, that number, 915-544-5876-544 for KTSM. Back after this break and the top of the hour news on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heavier eastbound traffic on I-10 eastbound between Piedras to Chelsea. Also, a medical emergency to watch for on Cotton at Montana Avenue. You could use an alternate route like Dallas Street or Piedras to avoid any delays. And a crash on Montana at Justice Drive at Tierra Este. Take Edgemere as an alternate right there. And that's a look at your latest El Paso traffic.
In this week's Marketers Report, Patrizio Spagnoletto, Global Chief Marketing Officer, Direct-to-Consumer for Warner Brothers Discovery, weighs in on the difficult task of building and retaining consumer trust.
Trust is a really hard thing to build and a really easy thing to destroy, and we have to be very respectful about that. Our partnership with iHeart has really helped us build that trust and that relationship with the on-air talent. The best thing for us to do is to build a relationship with our consumers. And if those consumers have a relationship with the DJs that are on air, then we want to build on that. House of the Dragon, which was one of our most successful, if not the most successful campaign we've ever done for a show, audio was a core part of that.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to all. Every audience, live conversations, trusted influencers, and the insights and data you need to grow. Not just a media company. iHeartMedia is your access company. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in his lifetime. For Black men, that stat is 1 in 6. When prostate cancer is caught early, it's highly treatable. But because most men have no symptoms, it's vital to talk to your doctor at your annual visit about prostate cancer screening. Not sure where to start? Go to pcf.org for the help you need to navigate this disease and make the right decisions for yourself. Remember, it's your life. Go to pcf.org today.
Stay informed at kcsmradio.com.
This message is for all of you sitting in the passenger seat. And apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable, but how does it feel to be at the mercy of someone who thinks a random text is more important than your life? Someone who takes their eyes off the road while speeding along in a 3-ton hunk of steel. Freaky, right? Well, why not just ask them to stop? Or better yet, volunteer to text for them. It might be a little awkward, but believe me, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Affirmative action is now barred from being used in college admissions decisions. That comes after the Supreme Court today ruled in favor of challenges to affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard. The High Court ruled that the university's admissions policies were unconstitutional. Democrats in Congress are demanding change in light of today's ruling. Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas says affirmative action has given opportunities to undeserved communities.
And today's Supreme Court decision ensures that our colleges and universities will look less like real life America than they should.
He says if colleges cannot use race, then they should also be blind when it comes to legacy. Charges will not be filed in the deadly stampede at the Astro World Music Festival. On Thursday, a Houston grand jury decided against filing a criminal case for the 2021 tragedy at Energy Park. 10 people died in the crowd surge at the concert hosted by rapper Travis Scott, including a 9-year-old child. Scott, who was performing at the time of the incident, claims he didn't know what was happening. The U.S. Department of Justice is asking community members to weigh in on changes to the Minneapolis Police Department. Lisa Taylor has more.
It comes after the DOJ revealed the findings of their 2-year investigation into the MPD, which was sparked by George Floyd's murder at the hands of former MPD officer Derek Chauvin. The report found that the department uses excessive force and engages in practices that discriminate against Black and Native American people. The DOJ held meetings with several community groups this week with the goal of listening to the suggestions for real change. I'm Lisa Taylor.
An experimental cancer treatment from California is now ready for humans. Researchers are fighting pancreatic cancer, and they say they've made a breakthrough. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A new Pew Research poll finds nearly half of all Americans view immigration as a big problem, compared to just 38% a year ago. Carrie Cheshire with Texans for Strong Borders is not surprised.
It's very clear that the voters want this issue solved. They're sick of politicians talking about it and not doing anything about it.
He says that asylum seekers are being processed and released into the middle of the country, making illegal immigration a topic for the whole nation. Cheshire says this is going to be a big part of next year's presidential election.
If you look at the Republican field, the two candidates at the top are the quote-unquote immigration hardliners.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s last sibling has died. The King Center said Dr. Christine King Ferris died peacefully this morning with her family by her side in Atlanta. She was 95 years old and the first child to Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Christine Williams King. Part of the ocean front in Virginia Beach remains under a swimming advisory due to water quality issues. Rebecca Hughes has the details.
The affected area covers from 8th Street to Aqua Lane by Croatan Beach. The Virginia Beach Health Department issued the swimming advisory after recent testing shows bacteria levels do not meet state water quality standards. Ahead of the holiday, swimming and wading are not allowed, and signs are posted in affected areas. Limited details are available, and there's no word on if the area will reopen anytime soon.
Disney will re-release some of the studio's classic films to theaters to celebrate its 100th anniversary. 8 films will get the re-release treatment, with the first being Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl on July 7th. It will be back in select theaters for 2 weeks and will then be followed by Toy Story. The run of re-releases will continue through October. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Pay. That's pay. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Want to save on new blinds? Blindster.com offers custom blinds, shades, and shutters at prices less than big box retailers. Order 10 free samples of any product and we'll ship them to you for free. And right now, save 50% off any order during our July 4th sale. Blindster.com.
From iHeart Podcasts, Supreme, The Battle for Roe, tells the story of the unlikely champions behind the landmark case Roe v. Wade. Starring Maya Hawke as 26-year-old lead attorney Sarah Weddington.
We're challenging the Texas abortion laws in federal court.
And Academy Award nominee William H. Macy as Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun.
Time is not the most important factor. Getting it right is.
Listen to the podcast Supreme, The Battle for Roe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the good stuff. I'm Jacob Schick, a third-generation combat Marine.
And I'm his co-host and wife, Ashley Schick.
We believe everyone has a story to tell, not only about the peaks, but the valleys they've been through to get them to where they are today. We're joined by some amazing guests who share the lessons they've learned that shaped who they are and what they're doing to pay it forward and give back.
Listen to the good stuff on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690 KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of commentary, including those with some plans or considerations towards adventurous travel, let's just put it that way. Renato Rivera asking when it comes to the local space race, do they have standby rates for flights? Simple answer, no. You can stand by. They've been helping to open up the wait list at certain times. Prices have been increasing, so buy early, I guess, if you even can. It's not exactly an accessible thing, but there was Virgin Galactic, again, had reopened their list. They were at 700 previously, and then as of at least, I think, 2021, 2022, now estimated at 800. So it's a chunk of change, and if they can continue to pull it off. One thing I want to say that's also noted along with this, this specifically reporting from the Washington Post, I'm referencing here on the regulatory situation that this exists in currently, because this is in a learning period, as they refer to it, that's been in place since 2004, that prohibited the FAA from issuing regulations for passengers. It still does the certification for like the entries and exits from the atmosphere to look for safety towards those underneath these vehicles on the ground, so to speak. But there's a question with the current period of this, again, learning period set to expire in October. So there's pushes that are going along with this for them to either extend that, with essentially these companies saying, well, we're not like totally there yet, so you got to give us more of a chance. I mean, notably, Blue Origin has been on hold for a bit after they did start up their commercial hops, is the way I put it, because basically they go straight up and then straight back down, as opposed to, I mean, I guess with the Virgin Galactic one, you fly around a little bit, arguably. I don't know if this. I'm not enough of a science nerd to know exactly what benefit they're getting from the different packages, so to speak. But what I will say is that if it does happen that they extend this, FAA says that they are ready to deal with that. But I don't know, it might be a real push to get all the passengers they can in before that deadline, just going to say. In any case, do have those phone lines open right now, if full up at the moment. Just keep that number in mind, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. One final note I will say here, RJ saying that booked a trip to see the Titanic first. I mean, yes, it's noted by that Washington Post article, among many others, that yes, there is the whole aftermath that we are immediately in of the Ocean Gate and all the stuff to come with it, and regulation or consideration. I mean, there's, yes, the large amounts of money spent to take an unconventional mode of travel that is not totally tightly regulated. There are some similarities that abound here, even if given what I know about both situations, I'd trust this a hell of a lot more than I would the underwater part of it, also it being more. But yeah, okay, I'd take a free trip on this one before I ever would any one of those unregulated submarines. Let's just say high pressure seems harder to deal with than no pressure, even if there's a lot more explosives that you're then riding on. But one note I would also make is that, well, they've got quite the waiting list on this one, but also a lot of people have been saying, just to take it for our field for a second, that this is going to be the death knell of the like ocean exploration type of, and yeah, RJ saying that, $450,000 is the benefit. Sure. And I, again, would expect that maybe they'll get to 2 or maybe even 3 launches a month if they could. But, and yeah, also saying must be steel, not carbon fiber. Absolutely agree with you. There's a reason, actually, the spaceship or the Starship that's the Elon Musk's outfit has been working on, and that is made out of, well, stainless steel in their case and not carbon fiber. And also what it was, John Browson saying a little bit earlier, saying let's see who has the first space crash or blow up on takeoff. Technically, they've all done that already. If you're talking about with passengers on board, yeah, that's a different circumstance. But of course, the most recent Starship that SpaceX was working on did blow up after it got here. But of course, the phrase used there is that everything past the launch pad was gravy, because they're still very much in the testing evaluation phase and a different scale. Let's be honest. They're looking at orbital, whereas a lot of the stuff regionally is suborbital. So more temporary, lower altitude, so to speak, though. Once you start talking dozens of miles, what's that between friends? Anyway, let's get to those phone lines now. Of course, the number to call again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have on the line with us here right now, we have Stephen on the east side here with us. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
I wanted to comment a little bit about what Marco was saying yesterday. He's a little bit more pessimistic than I am when it comes to children's education. And
fair enough.
And for me, what I think it is it's not the things that he was concerned about is not necessarily everywhere. So it depends on what school district you're in, and sometimes it just depends on your teacher. Different teachers have different ideologies and different things, and unfortunately, sometimes they bring their ideology into the classroom with them, which they shouldn't. But no matter what side you're on, you're going to have some people doing that.
Sure.
The thing is that people on the left tend to go into education at every level rather than people on the right. So education in this country, in that sense, has been lopsided, and that's a little bit of concern. But I feel like my kids, even nowadays here in El Paso, I'm not too concerned about having radical teachers around here. There's not as many as there are in other parts of the country. So far, I think my children have been well educated with the public education system here in El Paso. And we discuss things also, and we're involved in their lives and involved in their education. So if they were getting some unusual things taught to them, they would discuss it with us, and we can always bring it up. So I'm not as pessimistic as he is when it comes to those kinds of things.
And good, again, very glad that you're doing that, because being involved in it, I think a lot of this ends up coming from, maybe not specifically what Marco was referring to yesterday, but the whole drop kids off at school, no longer my problem kind of mentality that unfortunately seems, and I don't have exact numbers to point out here, but the fact that it exists at all means it's way too prevalent. And the idea of, the whole, change has been reported both anecdotally and in political cartoons of previously it was, junior got bad grades, what did you do wrong, kid? And now junior got bad grades, what did you do wrong, teacher? Like those kind of mentalities, as opposed to you might have to parent your kid just a little bit. And I realize I'm speaking from a position of no experience with the actual raising of a child at this point, but the considerations towards it is that if you're not going to be involved in, let's call it, outside of the time that they are sleeping in your house, their major involvement of life, and just being like, well, yeah, you're doing fine. If you're not involved with it, I don't really know what people expect at that point. And I would certainly hope that teachers bring their passion, bring their zest, their zeal for it, if not totally there. And now I have to convince these kids to believe the same way I do. But I will say that in all of these circumstances, parental involvement, making it so that hey, what are you learning in school today? What are they teaching about these things? How do you feel about that? Having the family discussions, because I think that the real issue comes down to, and I'm still not going to get over this for a minute, I don't see myself anyway, if you're expecting anyone else to inculcate your values into your progeny, I don't know how anyone expects that to work out well for them.
Yeah, and the stats always bear that out. If you have two parents in the home, the statistics show that your children will be more likely to succeed in life, more likely to go to college, more likely to not be poor if you've got two parents in the home. And when you have two parents in the home, you're more likely to have more parental involvement just because there's more parent time in general. I mean, this is how the numbers work out. And while we're on this topic, the Supreme Court and the affirmative action is out the window now. And I think it's kind of funny because our kids kind of joke about it, but at the same time, it's serious. I've got mixed race kids. So, when it comes to college applications, which they're getting to that level at this point, their age, they're applying for college and stuff. I mean, what race are they going to put on there since they're mixed race? Obviously, they're not going to use my race. They're going to use mom's race because that's always been more beneficial when it comes to scholarships and different things like that.
Sure.
And it's they would joke and say, well, yeah, if you have an interview, mom will take us, not dad. Dad, you stay home out of sight type of thing. And we joke about it, but it's kind of sad that that's kind of the way the world works, or was working anyways. And I don't know if you know the story. Like, there was this guy from India who had quite dark skin, but he was from India. So he actually dressed up with a fade and made himself look like African American because he knew he was going to be discriminated against for being from India rather than African American. And so there's like all these little silly things that go on when it comes to just judging people based on the color of their skin rather than who they are, where they come from, their actual background. Because you could have a black family with two parents in the home who their parents are involved in their education and totally involved and maybe in some ways a lot more privileged than some poor white kid and wherever. So it's kind of silly that it was basically race-based, skin color-based judgments going on. And so it's probably for the best. That being said, I still think these other conversations we've been having about what to do about your local school and especially these inner city, urban cities, the education system has to be reformed in some way. That has to be improved because if you're in one of those kind of losing school districts where education just not really going on for whatever reason, culturally, not enough parental involvement, those kinds of things, then you will have these disproportionate outcomes, not because of necessarily their skin color, but just because of the circumstances that they're in and the cultural surrounding of some of these especially urban centers. And so that something needs to be done there. And I hope that gets focused on rather than purely race-based admissions.
I'll say this about the idea of it. I think that I'll agree with what, again, Chief Justice Roberts wrote in the majority decision about it being a well-intentioned program. Whether you agree with it or not, it certainly has been a lightning rod over decades at this point, and they focus a lot of things. And I'll just say this because, as I also mentioned at the start of this program today, there are some significant similarities, at least in the focus on it, to what has already been going on within the state of Texas that was focused on the ending of diversity and inclusion types of programs at state level institutions, primarily colleges. And I'll say this, trying to do solely amounts of like recruitment based on quotas, essentially. I mean, there's an argument to be made in favor of them, but if not done correctly, it can end up being just all right, did we check the box? Did we get the requirement? Okay, move on, as unfortunately lowest common denominators of trying to just get to requirements ends up hitting. But what I will say is that if there is not recruitment then going on to specifically identify areas of deficiency, if something ends up not looking like the community, the constituency that it's pulling from, and ends up being skewed, if there's not, because within any population and any subset of the population, there are going to be exceptional individuals, and those that may or may not be able to make it and prove it through test scores or any of the metrics that are necessarily being used. So I feel very similarly to that as much as there are those that are celebrating and decrying in probably equal measure, depending on your part of the political spectrum that you're on, when it comes to this decision, this Supreme Court decision, if something isn't being done about it, because you kind of mentioned it there are still aspects of this. I mean, there are different, say, diversity-based and, scholarship programs, private ones, public ones, all of those kind of things. And without necessarily allowing for as just we'll just see who ends up coming here, without being done things to still overcome any kind of structural inequalities, things that make it so that someone who otherwise would have merit is unable to access that, without still work being done on doing that, where people are going to be left behind. And that's where I think the work, particularly in the wake of this, and also as a side note on here, meant to mention it earlier, but there of course has been, as a Supreme Court decision has come out that has caused controversy, it is noted by our national news partner that President Biden is opposed to expanding the Supreme Court. Speaking in an interview with MSNBC, argued doing so could politicize the court forever, which of course has been an idea that's been floated. So I don't expect that will come up, at least not from the administration directly this time around. But I think that particularly those that are opposed to this decision and the way it came down, that it's at least a way forward to try and still achieve those goals. And hopefully, maybe, I don't really have a good read on that, a less contentious way, but we'll see what happens. But I mean, certainly it's a complicated issue, and one that has a whole new world coming into it as of today.
Yeah, I want to correct what I said earlier. I said purely race-based. I misspoke.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Let me just say this. If you were Asian, you would have to get a much, much higher test score than if you were another race. So in that sense, it was race-based. And something I want people to realize too, and something I wish it was more broadly understood, because there's a lot of people out there who may have felt that said, well, I am going to be discriminated against because I am a minority. And that if they just automatically feel that way and feel like they're victimized in that sense, then a lot of those children who normally would actually try because they feel like they have a chance will end up not actually trying because they feel like the whole system is rigged against them. That's very damaging to children to be raised to think that way when it's not in reality that way. If all the children grow up feeling that they all have an equal shot, and if they work equally as hard as anybody else, they have an equal shot, then that's the best way to raise our children. And if they don't think that, then it actually inhibits them even trying in the first place. And you know that a lot of these kids who do come from, like I said, a lot of the they're a minority too, the Asian minority, but they're culturally and their education is very stressed, and they work very hard, and they don't, their lives are very structured. You come home, you practice your instrument, you have homework, and this time, and they limit time on the internet, and all these kind of structurally things that are good for kids to have, like time limits on the internet and time limits on this. All that stuff is very, very good, and in some ways, it's a lot of sacrifice for that child and their family to make things work that way. If the people in the country realize that those kinds of things work and can help for the benefit of their child, then it doesn't matter what race you are, and everyone can succeed. But if people don't believe that, then they're not even going to try.
Like I said, we'll see what comes out of this new world that has been established with this. Again, from at least the state of Texas perspective, only one public institution expected to be directly affected or having to change policies, as noted by the Texas Tribune. UT Austin, the only Texas public university affected by Supreme Court's ending of use of race in admissions, though private school impacts are also expected, noted by them as schools like Rice and Southern Methodist University, quite possibly impacted as well. So keep our eye on that one. And of course, a lot of response continuing to come into our newsroom. So I'm sure there'll be further discussion on this in the coming days and, well, probably tomorrow. Let's just put it that way. All right. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. And whoop, okay, I guess we lost him at the end there. So, okay, let's go ahead and take that next break now. And coming out of this break, we'll continue going to those phone lines. Again, if I'm willing to actually have a discussion, or someone willing to have the discussion with me, particularly on important issues, like of which this one, having wide-ranging impacts both across the country and here in the borderland in its own rights. We'll keep talking about that. So let's go and take that break now. Coming out of this break, more phone calls, more on the line. That number, of course, to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for slowing for the crash on Gateway East at Lee Trevino. Also an accident on Mesa Street southbound at Sunland Park. Take an alternate route like South Mesa Hills to avoid delays there. And a collision on Montana at Justice in the Northeast Valley. Fire crew staged for a medical emergency caught north of Wyoming at Montana Avenue. And that's a look at your latest El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com, and I sell custom blinds designed for do-it-yourselfers. Unlike stock blinds offered at big box retailers, Blindster blinds are custom made for your windows and shipping is free. And right now, save 50% off any order during our July 4th sale. Blindster.com.
When your back pain is your foot's fault. This is Dean's story.
It was affecting me when I walked, which is a kind of a common activity.
Dean's chronic back pain had become a pain in the you-know-what.
At first, I just sort of ignored it, but eventually everything catches up to you.
Physically and mentally.
Back pain affects your mood. It really does.
But that's not the only connection Dean made.
A friend of mine suggested I go to the Good Feet store. I was a little confused. Why would I need a foot store? My feet are fine.
But he thought, what the heck? He had nothing to lose.
They took impressions of my feet, and with the footprint, they were able to get me a personalized arch support that lifted pressure off my back.
So the source of your back pain was right under your toes.
It's something maybe I should have known, but I found out in the nicest possible way.
See how arch supports work for you with a free fitting. Find your Good Feet store at goodfeet.com.
Airway Boulevard at I-10.
Ask Sherwin-Williams during the Sweet Summer Sale, June 30th through July 10th, and get 30% off paints and stains with prices starting at $31.14. That means 30% off our most popular color family, blue. Psychologists have found it to be soothing and relaxing, which makes it especially great for bedrooms and bathrooms. And of course, get 30% off all of our other colors. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
If you're hiring, it can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. Like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Now try ZipRecruiter free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/FREE.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments, commentary, and other things going on. And if you want to add your 2 cents, you can certainly do it that way on the social media pages. Again, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Or, well, not so much the Twitter. That's more of a DM response thing, but we do try to keep our eye on those. I will also say, though, we have the phone lines open, including one still open right now, at least one, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Now needing to... a lot of commentary coming on there. And let me just say, there's some conversation going on about racism and directional racism, from one type of person to another. Let me just say that racism don't really care which way it's directed, either towards a majority or a minority, but in any direction, it's bad. And I don't feel like that should be a controversial statement, but apparently I'm going to guess we're going to get there at some point. But in any case, let's back to those phone lines now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Marco and Central on the line with us here right now. Marco, thanks for joining us.
How's it going, Andrew?
Doing right there. What's on your mind?
No, yesterday it was funny because you and I yesterday had a great discussion about the future of our education system. And then you had Stephen calling right now and kind of augment and add on
to
that conversation, which was, that's what I want. That's what I find about amazing of your show. And then here comes Eric. And Eric, you know what, Eric? I'm going to say it like this. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
You have Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, Portland, Detroit, St. Louis, Memphis. I mean, I can go on and on about all the assholes that Democrats control and the defunding of police, the high crime rates that exist. And what happens there in those cities? What happened around 2020 when COVID and the whole George Floyd thing happened? Okay. We had these massive riots, about $1.7 million, right? $1.7 billion in claims, right? That's what that's the official claim. Hey, it's about $1.7 billion. I say it's more than that. What about the families that couldn't get money for the destruction of what happened to their buildings? And that happened in Kenosha. That happened in all these places where BLM was there, Antifa was there. I mean, Antifa in Portland, they've utterly destroyed that city. And so then Eric has the audacity to come on your show. And I'm like, and he talks about white supremacy and violence. And I'm like, bro, tell me where the Klan is marching in Skokie. I want to know. Tell me where there's these white nationalists affiliated. They're like Cobra. Where are they, Eric? Where? Did you think they would be plastered all over the news? No, you know what's plastered all over the news? You got flash mobs of people stealing stuff. And the reason and it pissed you off that I said educated, but you know what? You know who's marching with BLM? White educated males and females. And then you have unemployed blacks. All of them frustrated, going out there looting, destroying, doing whatever the hell they want to do. And Eric's like, oh, well, you know, there's white supremacy, there's violence. And I'm like, bro, you know what? And then you say about the Enlightenment, bro. You must read Rousseau, Marx, and some other, like, I have no idea. Because the people that I respect, that I've read, are people like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Locke, Kant, Voltaire. I mean, even modern people like Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn. And so I don't even, you say that you're an educated person. I want you to bring it. If you're educated, stop giving us glib conversations that are just terrible. Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, Eric. When I come on Andrew's show and they're like, Marco from Central, people are like, oh, you know what, that's cool. We're about to get educated, enlightened, and entertained. When you come on the show, it's like, oh, Eric from Nobody Gives a Damn. And it's like, oh, look, it's Eric from Nobody Gives a Damn. You know what? I'm going to go to the bathroom because this dude sucks. That's what people are doing, Eric. So if you're going to come on Andrew's show, bring it on. Don't bring stupid glib comments and think that we're all impressed because you went to Wikipedia and you're like, oh, look, the Enlightenment, I know what's going on. No, you brought on stupid comments is what you did. And so if you're gonna bring it on to Andrew's show, bring good points, because Stephen did, I did. We're trying to have an elevated conversation on the future of America, what's going to happen to our students, what's going to happen to the people here, what's going to happen with immigration, and you bring these stupid comments. I'm sorry, Eric. Grow up.
I'll say this. Frankly, violence, political or otherwise, is not acceptable. I don't care which color it ends up coming under, which party color that is in this case. Red, blue, pink, purple, magenta, sparkly. It doesn't really matter to me, because if someone is saying that, well, this violence is justified because of X, for the movements, talking specifically about then the what happened in the summer of 2020. A lot of those, I mean, okay, sure, there's rhetoric out there that's riot is the language of the unheard, and to a certain point, I get that. To a certain point, I understand that frustration, when boiling over to a certain point, begins to outstrip reason. But to say that that is therefore acceptable, should be more response happening to that before the force point. Should have ever reached the point that it did in that summer? Probably not. But to say that therefore it's fine, when there were also in those instances, I mean, frankly, the people who were actually out there protesting for a purpose, for an issue, for saying that, things are not working in our community, should have been the most ticked at those that were then taking advantage of that situation. I mean, I watched so many live streams, and of course, we brought you all coverage of some of the things that were going on in our local community, thankfully remaining peaceful for, and not even the mostly peaceful thing. I mean, I ended up staying around probably a little bit too long in some of these marches when they ended up being those that were just looking to instigate something, looking to antagonize, and those kind of situations, at which there's always going to be some and someone willing to do that within any large enough significant population sample. But again, we did not see anything near the level of what was being seen in other parts of the country in our local community. And for that, I am very grateful and think that it did serve a purpose of talking about the actual issue and bringing a focus on that specifically. But those that were doing so are thinking out, oh, hey, a bunch of people are going to be out. That'll be great cover in order to commit crimes. Those people are despicable, and there's no real justification for them, because this was not a we are going to fight back against those that have particularly done our oppression. Because as much as there was some rhetoric going on that, like, one target that was, I forget which city it was in, but in like at Minneapolis or in one of those nearby areas, as having very severe policies. What I'll just say is this, particularly when it came down to local and like mom and pop stores, those things that were also definitely getting and unfortunately been targeted by that type of situation, is that there was this just incredibly callous discussion then after mass saying, well, they got insurance, they'll be fine, as if seeing someone's livelihood go up in smoke because of someone who was deciding to use a political moment and a very, I mean, it's going to be making it to the history books if it hasn't already. Probably take a little bit longer than that from 2020, I would assume. But like, that was a very significant moment within our country and within this experiment that is known as America. And to just say that, yeah, and well, that part doesn't really matter, is callous in the extreme. And again, not the look I think anyone who actually cares about those issues would want here. So anyone saying that, oh, well, this kind of violence is bad, but this other kind is fine, they're never really going to ring totally true with me. Because if we're accepting any level of saying, yeah, this is fine, well, instability breeds more instability and violence breeds more violence. And if something isn't being done to de-escalate that, that's the kind of thing we expect from, say, our officials, particularly law enforcement, that if they are not working to de-escalate things and just saying that, nope, let's just go straight to the truncheon, we would also call that bad. And so anyone that is going to be in favor of those type of things, again, don't care which stripe it comes under, I'm willing to call bad as well.
That's right. And so, quite frankly, Eric, you know what? You can keep having your discussions. Honestly, I don't know how Andrew puts up with you. You know, he sits there and he listens to you, and you will never explain yourself, because you always just live in this obscure reality that everything I'm saying is true. And I'm sorry, brother, but you are wrong. You're so wrong that your ideas destroyed so many livelihoods, so many parts of our country. And if you look, you're here in El Paso, Democrats here, you're like, well, look at the city. And I'm going to let everybody into a little secret here. Yeah, this may be a Democrat city, but for the most part, everybody has a conservative mind. We just don't want poverty. We don't like crime. You can walk in the most desperate part of El Paso where supposedly, oh, look at these gang members. And you know what those gang members do? They'll ask you, hey, what are you doing here? They'll be like, oh, I'm just walking around. Hey, you want a beer? You want a steak? If that's the level of violence in El Paso that you're talking about, Eric, that exists, oh my God, Skokie, be careful. No, Eric, you know what? The cities that exist like that, go to Oakland, go to San Francisco. I doubt you've even been there. Go to LA and look at the level of depravity, homelessness that's happening there. That is a time bomb for plague. I said it a long time ago, and they've had little outbursts of that. That is a time bomb of just disease right there. And nobody wants to do anything about it because in those cities that are democratically run, everybody wants to wash their hands. And those cities are slowly turning into Gotham. Well, my view of America and my view of El Paso and Texas is that every city should want to be metropolis, clean, crime-free, where families can go walk wherever they want to go walk, take their children wherever they want to go, and nobody's sitting there like a predator, perv, disgusting freak waiting just to abuse of their children. I mean, how did we come to this point that the main discussion of the day can be, hey, don't groom my kid, when there's so many other issues in the world going on? People don't understand. If this madman would have marched into Moscow, Putin would have nuked this dude's entire army. That's what would have happened. People don't think of the level of things that can happen, and we're so enamored over just nonsense. So please, Eric, if you're going to come on the show and waste people's time, I already told you what they do when you come on. Nobody wastes their time with you. They all click, they go to Fox, They go listen to music, and as soon as you're done, they click over, oh, this is done, boom, let's listen again. Okay? Stop wasting people's time. Thanks, Andrew.
Well, sure. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. You have a good one there.
You too, Andrew, brother.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and take that next break. We're now overdue for it, and after that, we will get to more calls and lines, using what we can for the end of the program here. And we'll get a little bit in depth here today, but in the meantime, if you want to get on the line, that number, of course, is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A murder investigation is underway in East El Paso. According to police, the shooting happened last night in the 2000 block of Diciembre Drive near Hanks High School. A 39-year-old man was taken to a local hospital with a gunshot wound. Police say that man later died, and investigators say he had been driven to the hospital in a private vehicle. No arrests have been made. The Isleta Independent School District Board of Trustees has voted to assign an armed officer to every campus. A spokesperson with the district says the action was taken to comply with a recently passed state law. House Bill 3 requires every Texas school district to have an armed officer on school grounds. The district voted last night to approve armed officers, which can be a combination of armed security officers or an off-duty El Paso police officer. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Expect heavy slowing for an accident on I-10 westbound at Chelsea. Watch for emergency vehicles off to the right on the shoulder. And on Gateway West at Westmoreland, an accident. 2 vehicles are off to the right there as well. Fire crews on a fire call reported on Railroad at Marshall Road. You could use an alternate route like Hercules instead. That's your traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Another hot one for our Friday heat advisory through Friday night. We have a weather warned day for tomorrow. High around 103 degrees, a little breezy with a 10% chance of a storm. Taking a look at the weekend, not quite as hot. Partly cloudy skies, should be dry for your Saturday. High around 101. As we look to your Sunday, partly cloudy skies, high around 100 degrees with a 10% chance of a storm. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Want to save big on custom faux wood blinds, shutters, cellular shades, and more? Shop Blindster today and save up to 50% over comparable blinds from brick and mortar stores. And right now, save 50% off any order during our July 4th sale. Blindster.com.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you. Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giant's cat and kitten food, too.
Hey everybody, Ryan Edwards here. Today's the day. Circle K is hosting the Circle K Fuel Day, offering 40 cents off each gallon of gas between 4 and 7 p.m. That's right, today, Thursday, June 29th. All you got to do is be a customer in line for gas before 7 o'clock, and you're going to receive 40 cents off discount directly at the pump. The price of the pump will be the discounted price. Get to Circle K today. Circle K Fuel Day, 40 cents off each gallon of gas between 4 and 7 o'clock. It is that easy. Check out more details at CircleK.com.
Want to save on new blinds? Blindster.com offers custom blinds, shades, and shutters at prices less than big box retailers. Order 10 free samples of any product and we'll ship them to you for free. And right now, save 50% off any order during our July 4th sale. Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And, of course, we got a lot of phone calls coming in there, squeezing in what we can before the end. And, of course, Talk El Paso brought to you in part by Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Of course, find them 950 Crockett Street, right across I-10 from Sunland Park Mall, where they've got their July 4th sales event in full swing. Get 10% off MSRP, $6,000 cash allowance, and other deals depending on the make and model that you're looking at. So find them, again, Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. And if only to entertain the trolls here for just a second, because otherwise, well, it's been a minute. Eric McNabb purporting that I'm escalating extremism because I am promoting election fraud lies. If you're talking about the assertion I made that the actual January 6th committee hearings were not the gasp of justice that I think you were even hoping for and that others were, because, again, what actually came out of the investigations themselves at that level was referring to other investigations. And my contention was and continues to be that at that time, if that's what you're truly hoping for, why not go straight to that step? But the purpose of those was a public flogging, which there may or may not have been effectiveness. That's up for debate here. But I'll just put the question to you that have multiple before times and that your continued contentions and the trolling, including just saying, oh, stop lying to yourself. Like, does that argument ever actually work for you? I really got to wonder here. But let's just say that you have never actually been able to say where I'm wrong in that analysis. You just give me the biggest total of whataboutism I've ever heard before. And if you don't actually care about what we've said on this show before, even though you claim to listen to all of it here, good luck with that. Anyway, got time for a couple more calls here on the line here. Again, that number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast in line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Mendacious Marco, the reader of classics, he claimed that the entire city of Portland was destroyed by Antifa. Now, the entire city of Portland was not destroyed by Antifa. Only a small section of downtown Portland was destroyed. I saw a map of it. He way exaggerated that, or he's just a liar. He's mendacious, And what does that have to do with January 6th? Anytime you talk about January 6th, the right talks about what happened in Portland. It's two different things completely. America has had race riots and city riots throughout its history. There's nothing new about that. But there is about a failed president organizing and executing a coup on Congress to stay in power. That's totally new. That's never, ever, ever happened. It's really, really, really bad. And blaming Antifa sounds like Trump blaming the capitalist attack on Antifa.
Okay, I just need to clarify. I'm sure you're not saying that, therefore, the things that happened in 2020, the riots there, were okay because they weren't new, right? That is not what you're saying, I hope.
Correct. Okay?
Okay.
And blaming Antifa sounds like Trump blaming the Capitol's attack on Antifa. And then later on, he went to call his mob patriots. And then he told them that they were special and that he loved them, like he told the North Korean communist dictator Kim that he fell in love with him. Now, back to Mendacious Marcos. Eric would eat his lunch in a debate. I would love to be there, and I'd be glad to debate any of your Trumper callers or listeners who are ready. You just say when and where, okay? I'll buy lunch. How about that? And you can be the judge on who wins the debate. How about that, Andrew? And the winner, and the loser will buy lunch. How about that? Let's make it that. Now, something that affects El Paso is the economy. Now, the economy has steadily improved over the past year since Biden's term in the White House, and a recession so far has been avoided. Consumer confidence this month reached the highest level since 2022, January 2022. And unemployment stands at historic low of 3.7%. Lowest rates ever for blacks and Hispanics, lower than when the Trump bragged about it all the time. By the way, he bragged about the market all the time. The market's done very well. It's up almost 15% this year to date and for the last year. So he said it was going to crash and everybody was going to be poor. Inflation has fallen from 4% rather to 4% from a peak of 9% back in June. And about half of that inflation, half of that rise in prices was due to price gouging by corporate America. And the rest was due to COVID's disruption of the supply chain. Now, about the Supreme Court, college populations before the VA bill came into play was a bunch of white boys, whose families had money. And the VA changed that when those guys came back from World War II and used their VA benefits to go to college. They changed the character of America's nation and economy.
I think you mean the GI Bill.
They changed El Paso. These Mexican-American boys went off to war and came back and went to college, and they became doctors, and they became lawyers, and they became teachers, and they became businessmen, and they eventually, became the predominant face at the political scene also in El Paso. Wasn't like that before then, okay?
I think you mean the GI Bill is that we're referring to? The GI Bills?
Again?
I think you're referring there to the GI Bills?
Yes, the GI Bills, correct.
Okay. That makes more sense then. I mean, the whole thing, what's going on with the Supreme Court, I mean, this again has the renewed calls for there to maybe be expansion of the court here, which President Biden is waving off, at least for the moment. We'll see how that continues on. We still got more decisions. I think there is not quite like a dozen that are expected later on with this. So, yeah, we'll see what ends up and how that conversation goes on with this. Again, if there's not a focus on having educational institutions, very specifically, at the very least, if not officially done with the way they are then doing admissions, of which I think that the biggest smacking of it that people have the most issue with is the idea of quotaing, of saying that we got to check these boxes, have these many people that represent this certain subsex of the population, regardless of like the fully impact of that, or if they are then, I mean, among other things, if they were all rich but of a rainbow of colors, would that truly be the diversity that people are looking for, expecting, particularly when it comes to the idea of racial justice? I would submit no, that it would not be, because oftentimes the conversation about race ends up being a cover for differences and issues with class. And so, yeah, I think that's maybe it may not be the right way to have achieved this. I'm not clear on that point here, but if there isn't more efforts, at least along those lines, to help achieve that, help make higher education more representative of America, and to see that there aren't people being left behind in terms of the accessibility and the ability to advance themselves and their communities, that would be doing a disservice to America. So it'll be very interesting to see. I know that there are renewed calls for more legislation on that. And okay, we're basically in Friday territory, but I guess we're on the cusp of it here anyway. So we'll just keep on with this. So as much as I'm not expecting you to be fully on board with the former president or any of his efforts in this here, it'll be very interesting to see how that record actually works out for the current administration, as they are very much considering, I mean, of course, the re-election campaign announced, and we are already well on the path to 2024. So these issues will be played out and ultimately adjudicated in its own way at the ballot box. So we'll see what comes out of it. So we got to take that next break right now. So I do appreciate the point of the call. You have a good one there. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and take that break. Coming out of this break, tell we got coming up for you, and again, plans for tomorrow. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. Ruli's International Kitchen, just a great little gourmet dive and sponsor of Talk El Paso. I've been going there for years, both before and since they catered my wedding. We chose them because, well, we love their food and have for years, my spouse and I, and that's why we go there for both special occasions and the everyday special occasion that can be like, oh, I don't know, lunch. So if you want to find out a great place to find great fusion, locally familiar flavors, and always something new, actually had the tuna tostadas myself today. Very much recommended. And of course, their entire menu, Ruli's International Kitchen. Find them not too far down the street from our station here on North Mesa. Give them a call at 915-313-4806 or again at 4176 North Mesa. Ruli's International Kitchen.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An accident on Gateway West at Airway Boulevard. Two vehicles are off to the right on the shoulder. And an accident on I-10 westbound at Reynolds. Expect slowing from just past Airway Boulevard around Buffalo Soldier up to the scene. The vehicles are not blocking. They're both off to the right. And a medical emergency on Zaragoza south of Socorro Road. That's your El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Want to save big on custom faux wood blinds, shutters, cellular shades, and more? Shop Blindster today and save up to 50% over comparable blinds from brick and mortar stores. And right now, save 50% off any order during our July 4th sale. Blindster.com.
Did you know that only 2 in 10 El Paso County students graduate with a bachelor's degree? By supporting Border Youth Athletic Association's mission of educational attainment, you will create a long-lasting impact in our students' lives. Your monthly donation enables 4th through 12th grade students access to after-school programs providing a safe and healthy environment. BYAA engages and empowers El Paso's future through mentorship and leadership development. We believe every player who gets an education wins. Do you? Go to borderyouth.org and show your support for our youth today.
Hip, knee, or back pain? See if Arch Supports can help you at the Good Feet store.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. So a lot of stuff we're working on for you, including going to get a little bit more in-depth with El Paso Matters probably next week at this point when it comes to their reporting going on, not even just on what's immediately in the region, but well beyond it, that Darien Gap story. The article titled out this week, tens of thousands of migrants continue to press through dangerous jungle with hopes of reaching U.S.-Mexico border. Editor of El Paso Matters, Rob Moore, went down there to see it for himself. So we'll be talking with him about that. So that coming up for you next week. Also, we got some schedule adjustments here. July 4th is coming up, time off, all that we'll talk a little bit about more. But of course, Friday is coming, so we got a lot more details that we'll give to you all there. So I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. You actually want to talk about the things here in El Paso. Maybe you just want to have a beat down, drag out brawl with someone else. We don't really need to be here for that, so find another place. But in the meantime, keep talking about and doing the things we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until then, until next time, want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An accident on Gateway West at Airway Boulevard. Two vehicles are off to the right on the shoulder. And an accident on I-10 westbound at Reynolds. Expect slowing from just past Airway Boulevard around Buffalo Soldier up to the scene. The vehicles are not blocking. They're both off to the right. And a medical emergency on Zaragoza south of Socorro Road. That's your El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Now, here's this week's iHeartRadio countdown of the top trending songs.
Making his return to the top 5, Post Malone is back with Chemical, debuting at number 5.
It's chemical. It's chemical. It's chemical.
Miley Cyrus keeps hanging on, but slips another spot this week. Flowers is your number 4 song. She climbed each week after debuting 3 weeks ago. Taylor Swift, whose tour hits Cincinnati this week, is up 1 to number 3 with Karma. Rema and Selena Gomez continue to hold steady in the number 2 position with Calm Down.
Baby, calm down, calm down. Yo, this your body, it puts in my heart for lockdown, oh lockdown.
And for the 6th straight week, Miguel is number 1. Sure Thing is your top trending song.
This love is sure.
And those are your top trending songs of the week. Hear them all on iHeartRadio.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeartRadio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Affirmative action is now barred from being used in college admissions decisions. That comes after the Supreme Court today ruled in favor of challenges to affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard. The High Court ruled that the university's admissions policies were unconstitutional. Democrats in Congress are demanding change in light of today's ruling. Congressman Joaquin